So in our second reading from Hebrews, we hear about discipline. But this discipline is not like this being disciplined is not like being punished. It's discipline like training, like for like an athletic competition or something like that. And so I was thinking of these different movies that have like these different training scenes. So I was thinking of Rocky, when he's getting ready for the big fight, and he's at the punching bag and he jumps a lot of rope and he jumps a lot of rope again. And then he like famously runs up those stairs, and everything. And then just to get everyone extra pumped up, we got Eye of the Tiger in the background. So it's like the eye of the tiger, it's the will of the fight, rising up to the challenge of our ride. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I was also thinking about like Star Wars, with Luke and his training. In the first one, he's got that little lightsaber drill that he does. But then his training like really picks up when he meets Yoda, and he's kind of struggling with it. I like the scene where he can't lift the stuff, and so he sulks down. He's all like has this little Luke pity party, and Yoda's famous line, do or do not do. There is no try. And Luke wants to take off and do his own thing, and Yoda's like, you must complete your training. I don't know if that's a good Yoda impression or not, but. So I was also thinking like the Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi has him do all the stuff, the wax on, wax off, paint the fence. And at the time, he doesn't understand why he has to do all that, but it all comes together, to help him, with the moves that he needs to do for his karate thing, I guess. Match, you'd call it, I don't know. But, sometimes in real life, it's not so put together, and has a happy ending. I was thinking that, not recently, but in times past, people have asked me to give them like guitar lessons. And so we've been going along all right for a lesson or two or three, but then the day comes when I have to introduce the F chord to them, which if you don't know, involves taking your one finger and barring down 2 strings at a time. And it really does hurt right away and never really becomes completely comfortable, even when you get used to it. But it struck me that I've never had a guitar lesson after introducing the F chord. I just never call back. Once in seminary, there was a classmate of mine who wanted me to take him down to the gym. He wanted some motivation to work out. He's like, I want to go down there with you. And it took some coaxing. And I finally got him down there, and I was showing him some stuff. And of course, if you've never done that before, your muscles get a little sore afterwards. So he used that as a reason to never go down again. I guess I'm the common denominator between these two events. I don't know what that means. But in my own life, thinking of volleyball. So I've never played volleyball. I was never taught how to play volleyball, except like gym class. Never been to a volleyball camp. But in my mind, I was just supposed to be good at it, with like no real effort or experience or training or whatever. I've never been particularly dominant in sports, but for some reason, ego really, I just thought I should be good at it. So in intramural volleyball in seminary, the bubble was burst, and I was getting wrecked, and I would just get furious as to like how bad I was at volleyball, even though there's no reason for me to be good. So furious, in fact, I decided one day in prayer that it was for the good of my eternal soul that I just don't play volleyball again. We know this training, this discipline, it can be tough. And Jesus, in our gospel today, he tells us to strive through the narrow gate. To strive. And this narrow gate is our life of discipleship that ultimately configures us to Jesus and his life. But we can't just like stroll into it or past it. It takes some effort, and it takes some energy, and it takes some struggle, and it takes some commitment on our part. So in our life of discipleship, to make sure that we're making time for prayer every day, that we're opening up the Word, that we're participating in the sacraments, that we're sharing our faith with one another, that we're reaching out to one another in acts of charity and works of mercy, that we're looking to grow in virtue, that we're looking, as our second reading from Hebrews says, to take our trials and our struggles and invite God into them, to allow His grace to transform them and to help us to grow as people. We know, of course, that none of this is easy. That's why it's this heavy, narrow gate that takes some effort to pass through. And when I was when I first became a pastor several years ago, my mom and my grandma came to my first Mass, and then we went out to eat afterwards. Then after that, I took my grandma back to where she lived, which is actually a convent in Michigan. And so we're in her room. I don't think they call them cells anymore. And so she's like, well, how are things going? And I guess if you pay rent, it's not a cell either. I don't know. She goes, well, how are things going? I said, well, it's just really tough. It's just kind of this big whirlwind. Like I went from this big, fancy parish with all these resources, and I wasn't in charge of it. And now I got these two places, and I don't know. She goes, well, who wouldn't like comfortable and easy? It's like, yeah, who wouldn't like comfortable and easy? But Jesus calls us to strive to enter through the narrow gate and to look each day to build up those spiritual muscles, I guess, in our life of discipleship that enable us to enter more into the life that He wants us to enter into, and which is ultimately the greatness, the glory of the kingdom of God. Fortunately, of course, we're not left to do this on our own. He's with us the whole time. He's with us in a special way through the Eucharist, where we enter into His offering of Himself in love for us, so we can truly enter into His life. I love here at St. John the 23rd how it's a special date in the life of the parish to remember the first time Mass was celebrated in the parish. It's a good reminder of what's central for us in our life of faith, that the Mass is the source and summit of our Christian faith and the ultimate expression of our worship and prayer. Of course, we know that through that, Jesus brings us into a holy communion with Him, and through Him, He brings us into communion with one another as we go along our pilgrim way together.